I'd like to thank you for inviting me on the show. It's such an honour to be here, and I'd just like to say that when I'm not playing Xbox with my mate Thor, I really like to listen to my favourite podcast, Pop Culture Pasta.
Pop Culture Pastor.
Okay, Cody, it feels like it's been a long time since we really talked.
It has been many moons.
Last week I was sick. That's why I didn't get to be on the pod. And you and Scotty handled it.
We did our thing.
You handled it like a ranch hand on the Yellowstone.
Just call me Rip.
Roped it, slung it. Yeah, all those things. I was, so like for the better part of a week, I was not feeling good at all. Kind of culminated in like this stomach bug.
Ewy.
Yeah, and even after you guys recorded, man, I didn't feel right all the way through the weekend. And it was Monday before I felt normal.
Thank goodness.
And
I recorded a radio show with you either Monday or Tuesday, so
Yeah, it was right in the nick of time. And it's been over a week since I felt normal. So, yeah, it'd been a while since I had a really, like, good stomach bug. And I say good, I mean bad.
I try to avoid those.
Yeah, they're no fun. It was my daughter's fault. So it all started over a week ago, obviously. I went to go pick up my girl from dance. And
That's issue number one.
yeah, we were driving home, and we were right about to hit the bridge, the Neosho River Bridge. And she says, I got to vomit. And I'm just like, hold it in. We're on a bridge. I can't I can't pull over here. And we almost made it to the end of the bridge before, bleh, and she vomited in my car.
Oh, you gotta have like a bucket.
She's probably going to be really embarrassed. I talked about that on the pod. So her full name is Ayla Rimbolt. And she vomited in my car.
Oh, Ayla.
Yeah.
But I also would have thought that with as many kids as you have, that there would just be a puke bucket somewhere.
Yeah, it was a really bad play on my part. Because, yeah, when you have kids, here's the thing, too. As soon as she vomited, I knew. There's like this foreboding in the air. Morgan Freeman and Dustin Hoffman show up in their outbreak gear. Like when your first kid vomits out of nowhere, it's like the beginning of an outbreak movie. They're like the monkey.
Oh, yeah.
And you just know, you get this like sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach. And I just knew. I knew that it was going to come back to bite me, and it did. I was on the list of the claimed by the virus of a pandemic movie.
Oh, yeah. Not a fun experience.
Yeah, it wasn't, but I made it. Here we are. Good now. We're all good. And we're ready to have a pod again.
Yeah.
It's been a while, so we've got a couple mainish kind of topics.
All
this
the main
week.
topics.
But we should start off with this news story because this is interesting. Are you aware who Sarah Michelle Gellar is?
Buffy.
She's Buffy. Yeah, she was Buffy the Vampire. I love that everybody is like, oh, she's Buffy the Vampire Slayer. For me, she was on All My Children. That was where I first run into her because my parents were big fans of All My Children, and they would come home on their lunch break just to watch All My Children.
She could have been Daphne from Scooby-Doo.
No.
Or Mrs. Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yes, she is all those things. Anyways, apparently she was recalling this like legal trouble she was in as a 5-year-old.
What 5-year-old's not in a bunch of legal trouble?
This story messed me up, Cody. I was just looking at this and couldn't believe it. I thought, well, how does that work? Apparently she did this campaign for Burger King.
As one does.
Yeah, as a 5-year-old, she did a Burger King campaign. And apparently it was one of the very first commercials to mention the competitor's name in the commercial.
You're going down, clown.
And she was one of the first actresses to do that. And she was 5. And so McDonald's sued their advertising agency, Burger King, and 5-year-old Sarah Michelle Gellar.
From a PR standpoint, McDonald's, that doesn't look good when you include the 5-year-old.
No, like why? What?
Go after the king all you want. But a 5-year-old girl is not a win-win situation.
It reminded me of the Miss Cleo episode we did, the documentary where they included Miss Cleo as a defendant, even though they knew, like, come on, she's not the one behind this. But yeah, it's Sarah Michelle Gellar, 5-year-old Sarah Michelle Gellar was named as a defendant and got sued by McDonald's. And she said that she kind of implied that she was banned from eating at McDonald's as a 5-year-old because of that. She said, quote, "It was tough because when you're a little kid, McDonald's is where all your friends have their birthday parties. So I missed out on a lot of apple pies." Now, come on, Sarah. What little kids are having their birthday parties at McDonald's? Why are you looking at me like that? Did you have one?
I didn't, but my cousin did. So, like, this is a thing for, I don't know how old Sarah Michelle Gellar is, but I believe that there were birthday parties at Mickey D's.
She's 45. She's a year younger than me. Okay.
I'm still going with her, like, because it was a thing when I was a kid.
Okay.
So
I've never heard of it. Maybe it was one of those rich acting kid things. Little known fact, Cody was a child actor.
Some people would say an expert at, like, tantrums.
Tantrum!
Out of nowhere.
Okay. Should we talk Last of Us? Are we ready to talk Last of Us?
I mean, if you're wanting to jump right into it, I mean, literally, this poor girl is traumatized by Ronald McDonald and his gang of lawyers. And
I mean, it's over now. They're not suing her anymore.
They better not be, because I'm Team Sarah Michelle Gellar on this.
I think we're all Team Sarah Michelle. Is there anyone left that's Team McDonald's? I'm just checking.
So
McDonald's still claims to sell like 50 billion hamburgers a day, and I'm just wondering how does everyone wait half an hour for them, or how we doing? Because our McDonald's, if you order anything, you're waiting half an hour.
Most likely. Now, I was rewatching for the third time, which I mentioned this last podcast, but you weren't on it. I'm rewatching Peacemaker for the third time.
Wow.
And so they mention in a couple different episodes, in a couple different spots, like the side characters for McDonald's, like Grimace and the Hamburglar and that gang.
Mayor McCheese.
And so literally, I think that's where McDonald's went downhill.
Yes, I
after
agree.
they got rid of the gang, as I'm going to call it. Food just went downhill.
The Hamburglar. Yeah, I agree. The whole McDonald's gang was where it was at.
I don't even know what Grimace is.
No.
Except just this purple blob monster was nice and friendly.
How did Grimace not sue Barney? I mean, clearly it was a ripoff of Grimace. They just changed the shade of purple. I mean, it looked just like him.
And made it a dinosaur instead of a blob.
I mean, my goodness. I wanted to be Mayor McCheese when I grew up. And now those characters are just lost to time. It's like Ronald was the only one existed. Do we think Ronald was behind that decision?
Oh, yeah.
Is Ronald just a narcissist?
But if you do watch Peacemaker, which you haven't,
you keep bringing that up.
The sheriff, he describes the assailants that got away, and he describes the Hamburglar to a T, even to the sound effects the Hamburglar made. And so
rubble.
It was an amazing, like, little Easter egg callback if you were a kid in the 90s, 80s, and I don't know how far back the Ronald McDonald crew went. So
yeah. All right. Well, there we go.
That's a little side you get here on Pop Culture Pastor.
Now I want some fries, possibly a Happy Meal.
Don't expect a shake with it.
Okay, so a few weeks back, we reviewed episodes 1 and 2 of The Last of Us. We're going to continue that here on this pod with episodes 3 and 4. I'm going to assume we're going to spend a lot of time talking about episode 3. Because
spoilers,
because a lot of people were talking about episode 3, so we'll probably get in there and mix it up a little bit, I guess. Although, and we'll get to this, in a bit, but it seems like, well, we'll get to it in a bit. Let's work our way there. So episode 3 was, frankly, it was a good episode of storytelling. I don't know if it fits narratively, but we'll talk about that again in a minute. But it's basically, we start off with Ellie and Joel on their way to an unknown location to the viewer, but becomes clear to us that it's this guy. Is it Bill or Bob? It's Bill, isn't it?
It is Bill.
Bill. Okay, I knew it started with a B. It's been a while. I only watched it once. And basically the entire episode becomes a flashback. We get to see Bill's story. Essentially, it's Bill's story.
Bill and Frank.
It becomes Bill and Frank. But I think essentially the story is the story of Bill. And in fact, in the final letter that Bill writes to Joel, he says that that's what life's all about, to protect our people. And so it's the story of Bill learning about what his life's about, right? And so he's living in this town. He outsmarts the military because he has a bunker. He's a prepper.
I know a few.
Yeah. Not as smart as this guy. And with all the stuff he's got an actual bunker hidden under a shelf.
Yeah.
A fake shelf. And he outsmarts the military. And once the military evacuates everybody from his little town, he works to fence it up, put the booby traps in place, and creates himself a nice little fortress.
So early on, I get upset with the military.
Okay. Explain.
So they're clearly racist.
Yeah.
Because Bill's living in a smaller community. He's not living like in a huge city.
No, this is clearly so you see some wide shots where there's city on the horizon.
Yeah.
So this is clearly a suburb.
Yeah, he's in the outskirts.
Yeah.
And so, so the episode flashes back and forth a little bit, but primarily stays in the past. But early in the episode, they come across this body of water, and Pedro Pascal is like
Joel.
I'm calling him Pedro because
All right. It's his Christian name.
it is
his given name. Yeah.
All
right.
I don't care about the video game. I'm
Pedro
sorry.
Abraham Pascal.
Yes.
Please use his full Christian name.
He is telling his tag along buddy now, be careful. And then they see a dead body with clothes on it. And then it flashes back to the past. And then you're in the town, and you see the people that are wearing the clothes. And Pedro had said, well, some people didn't actually get evacuated to a safe zone. They just got left to die on their own after being removed from their homes. And it was a black couple that...
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah.
You see
an
basically
infant.
the skeleton of a small baby.
Yeah. I was not happy.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to bring out the ire in me, and it did.
It did its job. So Bill, being a prepper man, he's got his stuff going. Like most preppers, I don't think would know actually that much what to do should they have found themselves in that situation where they're by themselves. But Bill's resourceful, and clearly, does it ever mention if Bill was in the military? He seems to have a know-how about him. But maybe not. Maybe they don't reference that. I just assumed.
Oh, I feel it said something.
Okay.
About his background.
He's got Soldier of Fortune magazines and things like that.
Yeah. So and it talks about his mom a little bit in just a random scene.
Yeah. And Bill, played by Ron Swanson.
Yes, Nick Offerman.
Nick Offerman, yeah. Who's full stop is amazing in this episode.
He's amazing in everything he does.
I feel like I need to give it a lot of credit where it deserves credit, because I am going to say I'm going to heave some criticism at it later.
And then I'm going to swat it back in your face like Dikembe Mutombo.
No. That's what you like to do.
Yes.
Don't worry. I'm not going to be like heavily critical, but I don't have just glowing things to say. Although Nick Offerman is glowing. Like, that dude rocked it in this episode and was kind of amazing. I was very impressed by Nick Offerman.
/ I want to buy one of his canoe making books.
He has canoe making books.
Like, he has a wood workshop that you can buy like crafted items by him and his team.
Yeah.
And then he also has written books, and one of them's about how to make a canoe. And he also has recorded it in audiobook form. And I would listen to that to go to sleep, honestly. Dude has a soothing voice.
And that's kind of the wonderful, wild thing about Nick Offerman. He's kind of like Ron Swanson in a lot of ways, and not like him in a lot of ways, but he's kind of a man's man.
Reminds me a lot of me.
He does woodworking and things like that. And yes, I mean, absolutely lots of similarities with Cody.
I actually do like woodworking. I'm not going to lie.
If society falls apart, just find Cody. That's my plan. I'm just going to, I figure, I just assume Cody's got a bunker.
Thankfully for you, you're just a block away, buddy.
That's right. We live in a small town and we live close. I'm not telling you where Cody lives. He's going to save me. You're going to save me. So Bill as a character is just, he's very resourceful. He's been ready for this. He kind of expected that it was going to happen. He doesn't get taken by surprise, and he creates basically his own little fortress is what he's left with, and creates this space until, and we're shown many people trying to break in, trying to get in, who meet horrible demises.
Bill's very creative.
Yes, with the booby traps. And finally, we get to this part in the story where his alarm goes off. He goes out to a hole and he finds Frank, who turns out to be a nice guy. Is that his name?
Frank is his name.
Bill and Frank, yes. And so Frank, we're not told a lot about his background, except for clearly he's cultured.
Very cultured.
He's educated. He's everything Bill's not, right?
Or on the surface that Bill's not.
Yes, well, right. Because what you find out very quickly is that Frank and both Bill are gay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Is what it is. It's a story.
Yeah.
And I did not turn the TV off. I was interested in the characters. I'm okay.
Yeah, and from a video game perspective, so
already known.
Yeah, both characters are in the game. They're listed as partners. You don't know if it means that how deep their relationship is, if it's just like, oh, we're survival doomsday prepper buddies or what. But this episode spends a lot more time on the relationship where there really isn't that much story development in the game.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that because that was a big, big sticking point for fans of the game. Now, I come into this fresh. I don't know anything about any of these characters, and so I'm not immediately pulled out of the story by the flashback and the concentration on Bill and Frank. In fact, I find them as interesting people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm along for the ride. I'm okay. I did not know it was going to be the entire episode, and it was a longer episode.
It was a longer episode.
But I wasn't bored. It was good. It was good storytelling.
It kept going. The pace wasn't too slow or too chaotic. It was just nice level storytelling of some random side characters that could be important later down the road.
Yeah, we get basically vignettes in their 20 years since the fall of society.
Which I will say, this episode brought back to my attention that this is 20 years later.
Yes.
Because, like, although Pedro looks older than he did at the very beginning of the first episode, like, I still forget that we're that far removed from the very beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to forget sometimes because I think that's where it subverts the traditional zombie apocalypse narrative, is that usually you're within a year of the initial happening, right?
Yeah.
And even The Walking Dead, I mean, it took time. It took seasons of television to go years beyond that. And so I think that's the subversion that this makes this story a little more interesting, is that you see the feeble attempts of society to start back up in the fascist government, allegedly, and the rebel factions who probably can't really be trusted either. And and so that's what makes this show interesting. Anyways, back to Bill and Frank. We get little vignettes into their life all the way until Bill gets sick, or Frank gets sick.
Yeah.
Clearly with a condition that he had. They alluded to that.
Yeah.
Or no, he says that they didn't have a cure for this before the fall. Yeah.
Yeah. And
so I'm assuming it's cancer.
I didn't know if it was cancer or because he's in like a wheelchair, if maybe it's something genetic like Lou Gehrig's or something along those lines, Parkinson's. Like, there's a lot of things that are essentially death sentences the longer out you go and there's not really a treatment or cure for it. Right.
And so it ends in the way you think it might end, when two people love each other in an apocalypse where you're running out of medication and you're looking at a slow, painful death, or what they choose, which is to overdose intentionally on something that would just put them to sleep, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where Joel and Ellie show up some month or two after this happened. They read the note, they figure out what happened, and of course, Bill, being the awesome dude he is, has left them a truck and everything they would need to get further down the road.
And Bill, knowing Pedro Pascal is on his way there, potentially, he addresses the note to him and knows this is the only guy that's going to get into my house. And so like, game recognizing game in that moment.
If you're reading, he basically alludes in the note, if you're reading this, I'm dead and you're probably Joel. Basically, I'm paraphrasing. Because you're the only one who could have made it past my booby traps. Overall, good episode? You thought it was good?
Loved it.
Okay, you loved it.
So I was all in on this episode just because it had good storytelling. So I think it's building to something, even though like clearly these characters are now dead. Yeah. But I think you're going to keep getting some flashbacks throughout the series. And you also get to see basically like people progress from, I guess, being middle-aged to old, and just like, oh, life does continue even if you are in like the safest part of an apocalypse where there's hardly ever anything going on. except for they did have a shootout at one point. But
Yeah, naturally, as one does in a
Yes.
zombie apocalypse.
But I mean, I really appreciated it. And again, it brought back that detail of, oh, this is literally 20 years, a whole generation later from the start. And so it then brings attention to the fact that Ellie's not 20. So she's
Yes,
born in
yeah.
a zombie apocalypse. She doesn't know these people. You find out these are the people that are sending the music codes through 80s songs.
At the end of the episode where he tells her to put on her seatbelt,
Yeah.
and she looks at him blankly, and he has to reach over and say, seatbelt. That was like, oh, yeah. She has no idea what he's talking about.
The car thing was bananas for her.
Yeah. There were great things. The good parts of the episode, definitely always the acting. Oh man, the actors they have in this are good. I don't know who played Frank, but he was great. We talked about Nick Offerman, of course. Pedro Pascal's awesome, and Ellie
Murray Bartlett.
and the young lady that plays Ellie is great as well. I'm totally sold on all those characters. I was in on those characters. Now, let's talk about the I guess you could call it the controversy of the episode, because the two characters in the flashback are gay. We have this ongoing argument, right? Mm-hmm. And we're pastors, so we can look at this and we can say, well, okay, everyone settle down. Like, I get it. We watch characters all the time who do things we wouldn't do. Right? But we still watch. I mean, Thanos. I'm interested in Thanos. I'm intrigued by the character of Thanos, but I get that there are things he does that I wouldn't do.
I mean, if we're going to like comic book movies, I'm honestly, I'll be honest, I rooted for the Joker. I rooted for Bane. Like literally in the theater, I am leaning over to my friend and saying, he's going to break the bat. He's going to break the bat. And then he broke Batman.
You're an agent of chaos.
I was, and am I going to pick up Bruce Wayne and break his back? No, that's not how I roll. And so like for me, this really wasn't an issue, and especially if you're thinking apocalypse, end of the world sort of stuff, and they're the only two in this area. It's not good for man to be alone.
Well, and honestly, it's okay. So it's not super original. Basically, this whole flashback is the first 12 minutes of Up in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. You're getting vignettes of people who have affection for each other in life, and yeah, they're gay. And that comes with that comes this storm of arguing. So I saw this play out on some groups online that I'm a part of, that are Christian, where, but they're also nerds. They're also geeks. Right. And I saw this play out a little bit, but here's the weird part. It results in this, like, you're even arguing on the quality of the entertainment.
Yeah.
In your political fashion. So I saw people say, oh, this was the worst episode ever of anything. And I'm like, nope, that's not true. Oh. But then I also saw the other side of it. There were people who were like, this is the greatest single episode narrative of a show ever. And you're like, no, that's not it either. It was good. It was good.
Maybe if you went zombie-based show, but I haven't watched all the zombie-based shows to give you that.
It's just so weird to see everyone lose their mind.
Yeah.
It's a show.
It is a show.
And honestly, like, look, again, we're all broken. So I'm not going to freak out watching broken TV characters, because they're all broken too. And whatever their particular brokenness is, I'm not sitting here being like, oh no, oh, I can't.
So I'm going to go kind of on the offensive.
Okay.
Against some of us in the faith. And I will say all of us at times, is that we put ourselves into the judge seat quite a bit.
Yeah.
And since the time of the judges ended, we have not been called to be in that judgment seat. Literally, the judgment or measure you use will be used against you. That's what Jesus says.
Right.
Our Lord's Prayer, forgive us as we forgive those who sin against us. So, like, there is this portion of faith where it's clear that we should just freely forgive, freely love, not have any of that judgment, because the judgment we have is the judgment that's going to be cast against us. And it ain't us that actually gets to carry out the judgment, the sentencing. That's God. God didn't ask me to be God here on earth. God asked me to be a light, to point others to God. But no, what you do on your own time, that's what you do. I will be a support. I will help you in whatever way you want, but just know that I'm not called to be the judge, jury, and executioner. That's not what we are called to do.
I actually think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Because here's my thing. It's like, by saying we're all broken, and I'm saying first of all, I'm not able to distinguish between your brokenness and my brokenness and tell you which is worse, because I don't think that's a real thing. And secondly, I'm not called to do that at all. Like, even if I could do that, I'm not told to do that. And so, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't see a particular kind of brokenness. Now, look, are there things we can put on a video screen that I don't want to see, that I don't want my kids to see? Yeah, sure, right. This isn't about what's good and bad for us to view. This is about the type of brokenness in our humanity.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there was nothing. The closest to objectionable this gets is the same as every other HBO show, where you've got two adult characters who are in bed and they've got blankets up over them, but you can tell that they don't have shirts on. And guess what? If I don't want to see that, I just fast forward past it, just like I would. It didn't matter if they're hetero or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm probably fast forwarding by all of it.
Yeah.
So, and maybe that makes me prudish. I don't know. It's just, I'm not going to judge you. Don't judge me. I would probably fast forward through all of it.
That's the thing about streaming is, like, you can easily turn it off. You can easily fast forward. You can do whatever you want. Like, I don't get the uproar. And again, the judgmentalness of us in the faith. Now, I will say, I think all people do get into the judgment role from time to time. But, like, when you start broadcasting it through social media, you're doing more harm than any good. So,
yeah. And so that's not to say that the episode can be free of criticism. So here's where I'm going to get it. This is where I think the episode can come under criticism for me. So fans of the game, there are fans of the game who were taken aback by the entire episode being like a break away from the main story for these side characters who do not get this in the game. You do not get this sort of background on these characters in the game, from what I understand. And so that was their complaint. Again, I don't feel that because I'm coming into this fresh. I don't know anything about the game.
I don't know how long the game is. I don't think it's an open world concept game.
Right.
And so
you don't have time for that in a game anyways.
You literally are going to have limited stories from the game besides they have to get from point A to point B.
Yeah, it's a weird complaint by a fan of the game because the game, just by definition, has to be first person, where it dwells on from Joel's point of view.
Yeah,
it has to, because that's the way a first person game works. But this is a show. It's entertainment. So you can develop these other characters. So I don't think that's a problem for me. Now, the problem for me, and I can't say this yet. I can't say it yet. It's an incomplete grade for me. I need to see how the rest of the season plays out. I need to see how the narrative structure of the show works. This is kind of the weird thing about having to wait a week instead of just repeat viewing. It's like, so a lot of people didn't like, you remember what season of Stranger Things was that where they stopped the story completely for this like flashback with Eleven, where she's with these other kids with powers, and it was just like this random aside. And when you're binging it, it just seemed like a speed bump. It was like, what was that? Like, I'm not interested in that at all, right? You know, this one where it's parsed out week to week, maybe it's a little different. I don't know. We'll see. I need to see the rest of the narrative structure, because here's the problem, Cody. If we go the rest of the season and I don't get anything that in depth on any other character, and Bill and Frank never come back into my view, then what the heck was that?
That was what we like to call a filler episode.
Yeah. And some of the things the creators have said, I've read some interviews this week, the past couple weeks while I was sick, make me a little nervous. They said that like the episode before they cut it had over 2 hours, and it brought them to tears. And they were talking about how beautiful and thing it was. And I'm a little concerned that the people that make this show just set out to make a statement episode. And if that's the case, then no, I don't like it. Wonderful performances, wonderfully executed. But I don't think it's a negative for me to say, to be able to criticize and say, hey, but I want the narrative to make sense. I want it to be about the story, not about your statement. You know?
So I think, so the episode that drops this week, which will be number 5, and it will drop the day our podcast drops, because the Super Bowl.
Special Friday, episode.
You don't want to compete with the Super Bowl, evidently.
Yeah,
just ask LeBron. But I'm hoping that we get some longer flashbacks in this episode.
The coming attractions for this week's episode did make it look like we were going to have that kind of episode for these people in Kansas City. That we'll talk about here in a second when we get to episode 4. If that's the case, and the narrative structure is going to be kind of like Lost, where they're doing these flashbacks all the time of these important characters that Joel and Ellie run into, I'm good with it. But we don't know that yet because of the way the episodes are parsed out. So that's all I'm saying. Possibly negative, possibly some criticism from me, but the episode by itself is beautifully executed. It made me care about the characters.
Oh, yeah. Like, I really hadn't cared about anyone but Pedro this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Team Pedro.
It is what it is. But again, at the end of the day, it's not the worst piece of thing I've ever seen. And it wasn't like the, Citizen Kane of episodic television either.
We need to do a podcast over Citizen Kane.
Do we?
Or Orson Welles.
That you sent me a clip of John Candy impersonating Orson Welles, and that was amazing. And it cut off, and I wanted to see the rest of the joke.
Oh yeah,
because it wasn't. I mean, it was from way back.
And so which Orson Welles is just an interesting guy, but that's not this podcast.
No. So, anyways, that was episode 3. Episode 4 gets back to like kind of the normal storytelling, right? So Joel and Ellie are on the road. They make their way through these adventures and travels to Kansas City. There's little moments of them bonding. You see them getting closer, which is fun. It's nice.
Yeah. Ellie's riddle or joke book is great.
Yes. Yeah, there's a great moment before we find out that they're about to get accosted, that where he falls asleep laughing. They fall asleep laughing at her bad puns.
So great.
But they get to Kansas City. They get involved in an altercation with a band of rebels there who have done away with... they've done away with the QZ there, the government. So they forced out the government, and you get the idea that the young lady who's in charge, played by Melanie Linsky, who's a great actress. I think she was in a season of Fargo. She was wonderful in that.
2.5 Men.
Oh, okay. She was in that as well. Nice.
I'm pretty sure she was Rose.
Okay. Yeah, she's great, but you get the feeling that she's not all there upstairs, that she has some paranoia issues, and we're going to find out more about that, I hope, in the next episode, the one that drops today.
Well, surviving a zombie apocalypse for 20 years would do it to you.
Yeah. And actually, the funny thing is that she has a kind of an interaction with a prisoner who's the doctor that delivered her, which I thought was interesting. And so she can't be super old. She hasn't been alive much longer than the apocalypse. What would we guess? She's in her 30s, maybe?
I would guess 30s or 40s.
Yeah. And it was back to the regular kind of flow of the narrative, and it was a good episode, but nothing stand out. We're left on a cliffhanger, and we don't really know what's happening, except for right now, Joel and Ellie are stranded in Kansas City,
near a Worlds of Fun.
Yes, it was amazing. They showed a couple, like as they're driving and nearing Kansas City. It made me wonder how they did that, because there were things I was like, oh, that is exactly the way the highway looks. There's one where clearly they were going down I-35, I think. And you see a sign, but you see the bridge, and I'm like, I really think that's how the highway looks right there.
So I kind of wonder if they had like a film crew film it and then go back with CGI and like made it look run down, add in cars that are broke down.
It was very freaky. It reminded me of a made-for-TV movie that came out when I was a kid called The Day After, about a nuclear holocaust that was filmed in Lawrence, Kansas, where I spent a lot of my years growing up as a youngster. And it made that, it's a weird feeling to see surroundings that are familiar to you, but in post-apocalyptic kind of way.
You and the Winchester brothers.
Yeah. Yeah, Supernatural. I forgot that they were...
They're Lawrence bound.
There's some Lawrence, Kansas folks there too. Anything else you want to say about these two episodes?
So like so Ellie actually almost kills someone. And that's kind of a traumatic experience for her. And you see Joel actually be empathetic and caring, and like, you shouldn't have to go through this at this young of age. And then basically you shouldn't have to go through this at all. But the world that they live in, that's going to be next to impossible potentially, especially if they're living life outside the government's protection. So
yeah, and she lets on that it's not her first time.
Yes,
she shot someone before. So,
and I felt bad for the guy that got shot, although he was shooting at them, and so
yeah. That's more of the same of the apocalyptic movie. It's the people you got to worry about. People are bad, and Pedro kind of lets her in on that by saying that, and then she kind of implies that he was one of those people. He did bad things, because that's how you survive,
and that's how you lose your hearing in your right ear. So
we get it's interesting, the narrative structure of we're very slowly building Joel and Ellie's characters and their bond. And if they keep this pattern where they sandwich these episodes with these really drawn out, like in-depth looks at these side characters, I might be into that. I hope that's what they're doing. We'll know a lot more. We'll know a lot more after watching this new episode.
Yes.
So far, I think it's a good show. I'm not ready to say it's like a great show, but it's good. It's got my attention.
For a zombie show, so far it feels really great.
Yeah. Not much attention paid to the quote unquote zombies or whatever they're called.
Yes.
The clickers, I guess. I don't know. I'm told by game people that there's different kinds, and maybe we see that in the coming attractions, because there was one that looked kind of like a Hulk version.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in more. Yeah. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about our other main subject, the moments in television history tattooed on our brains.
Jerry.
Okay, welcome back. We're ready to talk about the moments of TV etched in our memories. And I figure there's got to be like two distinct categories here, I think, Cody. Because I think there's entertainment moments that are etched in our memories. But then I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about history. Like actual historical things. Because for like my parents' generation, when they, President Kennedy's assassination, and then they watched, Lee Harvey Oswald get shot by Jack Ruby on live television.
Yeah.
And that was like a big deal for them. They saw it.
Flashbulb moments.
Flashbulb moments. And we'll definitely talk about those. Do we want to talk about those first? We might as well just get those right out of the way.
I guess.
I mean, because like, if I'm being honest, some of the moments that are etched into my brain in TV history are those, about half of them. I can remember when I was in 4th grade, when they wheeled in the TV for us to watch the Space Shuttle Challenger launch. Krista McAuliffe, I remember her name because of that moment. She was going to be the first teacher in space.
So this happens before I'm born. But like the thing I know is there was a lady that was going to be the first teacher in space. Like that was a big deal.
It was a big deal. And let me tell you, it was one of those things watching. I don't think as a 4th grader, it really, we watched it. We saw it flame. Like there were pieces. It was clearly breaking apart. And there's just quiet. And then, the teacher went and turned the TV off and she was crying. And that's when I think when we saw the teacher crying was when, like it was really hard for us to distinguish that it wasn't fake, like that we were watching something real.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that moment, well, Gen X we lost our innocence then, right? That was like, oh, okay, that was a real thing. And I don't remember any of the kids crying. Like, I think we were just kind of shell shocked.
Yeah, and that's not uncommon. I mean, you never know how people are going to react when tragedy happens, like just out of the blue. And especially a group of younger people, like that's a lot to process. That not only is this something that you're watching on TV where a lot of fiction happens, but you're watching something that is not fiction, and that like, did this just really happen? And that there's loss of life, there's loss. Our families are now going to have brokenness with them and are going to be missing their loved ones. And so, it definitely is a big deal.
Well, I had this intense desire when I was thinking about this show, thinking about the moments I remember from TV of what happened to her family, because I just wanted to know, like, what happened to the people that were related to her? I mean, she had a family.
Mm-hmm.
So she married her high school sweetheart. She had 2 children.
Yeah.
When this happened. And I had this desire, this intense desire to see what had happened to her children. So Scott, who was 9 at the time of the explosion, and Caroline, who was 6, they watched the launch from the roof of the nearby Launch Control Center. And they didn't attend. So they didn't attend the 30-year. They had a 30th anniversary, basically, like of the memorial or something like that.
I wouldn't attend.
And they issued a statement. Both Scott and Caroline became teachers, like their mother, and Stephen McAuliffe, who is was that her husband? let me back up here. Stephen was who he married to. He became a federal judge.
Interesting.
So, I mean, a pretty successful person. They released a statement that says the passage of 30 years since the Challenger accident is not of great personal significance to our family. For us, Challenger will always be an event that occurred just recently. Our thoughts and memories of Krista will always be fresh and comforting. We are happy to know that Krista's goals have been largely accomplished in that she has inspired generations of classroom teachers and students and has focused public attention on the critical importance of teachers to our nation's well-being.
That's a good statement.
It is a good statement. And so just me thinking about what effect that had on me made me have this like kind of intense desire to know things I didn't think about when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That, she had a family. And so that was just interesting to me. When it comes to flashbulb moments, we have to talk about September 11th.
Okay, so that's my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Middle school. And I mean, I know what class period I was in. I was in second hour. I was in Mr. Masner's classroom. I can remember Mr. Spire coming over to the intercom. And
what'd they say?
Teachers, turn on your TVs. The Twin Towers have both been hit.
They said that over the intercom?
Mm-hmm. And so every teacher had on their TV for the next class period. And then after that, it was only history classes would have their TV on.
Okay.
And so
interesting.
At this moment, so I'm in 7th grade when this happens. Okay.
All right. Middle school.
Yeah.
All right.
And so I can remember the discussions. So, I mean, there were teachers crying. There were students crying. But then there's a group of people I can remember distinctly saying, this leads to World War III, right? And this is the conversations that we're having at this moment. This has to be world changing because you don't attack the United States. No one attacks the United States. The last people that were outside of the United States that attacked the United States that were successful is Pearl Harbor. And so we're thinking, oh my goodness, what does this mean? Are they going to reinstitute the draft? That's something that was actually said.
Yeah.
And
so I'm a young adult. Yeah, I remember hearing that.
And then it clicks how many thousands of people were in the buildings and all the people that were on the planes. And then you get the story of the plane that crashed in Pennsylvania. And then you get the story of the Pentagon's been hit. And it's all just happening rapid fire. It feels although in the moment, it also feels like this is going on forever. And I remember so you couldn't escape it because TV, every channel, Nickelodeon was just news for the next couple of days at least, if not a whole week out.
Yeah, it's wild, especially to think about what the entertainment world was like after that for about 2 weeks. Yeah. It's interesting to hear you talk about it from your point of view because I don't think I've ever thought about what it was like for someone who is still a kid. I was 25. Mm-hmm. And so the interesting part about it, I mean, most people, I really don't get into these stories where someone says, this is where I was. I don't find that interesting except for when it's a different point of view than mine, different stage of life. That was really interesting to me. That's kind of nuts that they announced it over the intercom. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they would have done that if it happens when I was that age. They might have just let us go through the day and not not talk about it. But so I'm 25 years old. A friend of mine had recently been to New York City. We had stayed with a friend. We had gone to the World Trade Center. We'd been to these places, and I happened to be house sitting for my parents. So they were on vacation. And so I'm at their house. I work evenings because, I'm a young adult. And I remember my friend that I went to New York with, he called me at right around 8 a.m. and he's like, "Are you watching this?" And I'm like, "Watching what? I'm watching the back of my eyelids, bro. Why are you waking me up?" And he said, "Turn on the TV." And so I turned on the TV and obviously saw what I saw. And for about the first, 5 minutes or so of watching that, I'm like, okay, so a plane ran into the building. And as I was on the phone with him was when the second plane hit. And at that moment, there was that feeling of, oh, okay, this isn't an accident. This is coordinated. This is someone's doing this. And he came over and we watched TV all day. I mean, all day. It's the weirdest thing I remember it being a beautiful day. Gosh, it was just beautiful that day. In Lawrence, Kansas, it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. And we spent most of it inside. I did step outside at that point, and I remember seeing the trails of the planes turning in the sky, which is an eerie thing for us in flyover country, because we're used to seeing the straight contrails across the sky, and they were all turned, like mostly in 180s, heading back to where they came from. And so I'll never forget that. But watching that unfold on television all day was something that I just won't ever forget. It's why they call those flashbulb events.
Yeah. And although it's interesting, like studies done of how accurate are our memories.
Right.
Around those
that Malcolm
flashbulbs.
Gladwell episode of Revisionist History on that was amazing. And I suggest everyone listen to that. Go find that episode of Revisionist History.
We suggest other pods sometimes.
Yeah, because he talks about memory and flashbulb events, and it's quite eye-opening. Other things on TV that I remember, the Rodney King riots, also before you were born, right?
No,
91.
No, so I'm alive, but I'm not going to have memories of that. Oklahoma City bombings are bombing. That one. Waco's before me, or before my memory.
No, man. Waco's after the Oklahoma City bombing.
Is it?
Yeah. Because part of the whole lead up and the problem with the cults and all that had to do with the Oklahoma City bombing.
Like the Oklahoma City bombing is only like a big deal in my memory because not only is it like a state away.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
But my grandparents had just got new carpet like a couple weeks afterwards.
Oh gosh, this is a good story already. I love it.
And the guy that installed their new carpet, and like he was just freshly hired by the carpet store in this area, and he was from out of town. He installed their carpet, and he looked exactly like Timothy McVeigh. And
that's
so
unfortunate.
My grandparents thought that they had the Oklahoma City bomber installing their carpet. So,
by the way, that's so small town.
Yeah,
that it's amazing. I'm telling you, Timothy McVeigh put in our carpet,
but it was not him, thankfully. But I mean, like, so I'm young when that happens. Like, that's not something that's like super concrete, but like the memory of everyone else around me really is what I remember. And I mean, I remember the images, but that's also because every year, the anniversary date, they're going to show that.
Yeah. The other big thing I remember, historically speaking, on television was OJ. So there was the OJ chase.
Oh, yeah.
In the white Ford Bronco. That was a big deal. But more so than anything was the verdict of the trial. So the trial, I worked at a convenience store during the OJ trial. And you know how you had the TVs that had the lottery stuff on it?
Yeah.
We converted the TV to be able to watch the trial as the trial went on. And I can't even remember how long it went on. It felt like a couple months. Felt like a while, but
the documentary made it feel like it was forever.
But I can remember. So this convenience store I worked on was on a main drag in Lawrence, Kansas, town of about 80 to 100,000. The verdict was somewhere like right around lunch hour. It was the middle of the day, and Cody, this main drag, it was always busy. This convenience store was always busy. And I will never forget when they were about to read that verdict because everything just stopped. And we had 30 people in this convenience store all looking at the TV when they read out the verdicts. And then after the verdicts, everything started again. Like I remember looking outside and not seeing any traffic, like no cars. It was a ghost town.
Weird.
It was wild. And that's what I remember. That's the way I remember it. Now, Malcolm Gladwell would probably point out that I'm not remembering it right, but it seemed like the world stopped for the OJ verdict.
Yeah. And I mean, it was early on must-watch TV.
Yeah.
So my memories, besides September 11th, are more sports related. So my pop culturedom is heavily sports related in my youth. Mm-hmm. And so must watch TV, of course, was the Chicago Bulls. And so 98, Brian Russell, Jordan pushing off a little bit, a little pass on by, and then, that jump shot. And literally, if he had not gone to the Wizards, that may have been the most perfect ending to a career ever.
Yeah.
And that moment is ingrained in my mind.
Yeah.
Like the steal that he has against Karl Malone that sets it all up. Scotty's open. Forget Scotty. I'm Michael Jordan and I'm ending this.
I had been in on Jordan since early. Like I can remember watching the playoff game against the Celtics where he scored 63, which was kind of like his introduction to the reality of who he was going to be. I mean, and of course that was before they were winning championships. The Bulls had been terrible and they had made the playoffs.
And they lost that game.
Yeah, and they lost that game. And so I was in early, but like most of my friends who weren't in early, they hated the Bulls. So he's that kind of player. I think we're experiencing that now with Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs, where he's so good, you either love him or you hate him. There's the best players always inspire that. LeBron is a great example. You either love him or you hate him. There really is no in between.
And so growing up, I'm a huge Bulls fan. Like Bulls, everything is in my room. And so like, I don't know, was it 3 weeks ago I come in here all decked out in Chicago Bulls stuff?
And it looked like it was from the 90s.
And some of it was from the 90s. So, I mean, literally, that's my team of my youth. Although, since we're in Kansas and there's not a professional sports team, like my ties to them are really heavily Michael Jordan based.
Oh yeah. Mine were too.
It's not that I just love the Chicago Bulls organization. No, I really loved the big three at that time of MJ, Scotty, and Rodman.
Yeah.
And
I extended it to Kukoc. I like Tony Kukoc. I liked his style.
I might even extend it to Robert Parrish, who was on at least one of those teams.
I also remember that 98, that game, and because I remember my friends hated the Bulls, and we almost came to blows after that game was over because they had talked so much trash, and then after that game was over, they were like, "Oh, he pushed off. Jordan gets on the calls," and I was letting them know.
Well, someone needed to. But it's so weird going back and looking at like the teams that were around and somehow the Utah Jazz just kept making it to the finals. I feel that there were better teams in the West because even the Rockets, who had won the championships while MJ's gone, they get Charles Barkley.
Yeah, but the Jazz had that wily old man energy.
They did.
In basketball, that's something. Wily old man energy in basketball is something. They had Malone, Stockton, and Hornacek. Wily old men.
Yeah. Like Stockton was always passing, except for like he'll just take this occasional three and it always goes in. Hornacek was usually out on the wing, and then the mailman's just clogging up the paint.
Side note, we can't let any of today's kids see John Stockton's shorts.
Oh, yeah.
Because then they'll want them. And
they're so short.
Those cannot come back. The shorts were already too short.
So another image ingrained in my mind is when Shaquille O'Neal, after he got traded to the Lakers, like the league had complained about how long his shorts were. And so he wore John Stockton length shorts. And I instantly knew, don't go short shorts.
Man.
So I'll go one recent thing.
Okay.
And
hit me. I'm interested.
And again, it's going to be sports related. But DeMar Hamlin.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
I was watching it live. So like I see the tackle. I'm like, okay. And then I see him get up and I see him go down instantly. I'm like, oh. And like first thoughts concussion, because that's what is happening in the world as of football right now. But then like you see the player's motion, in which I noticed that, and I'm like, oh, this is worse than that. And Leah, my wife, is like, how can you tell that? I'm like, because people don't frantically motion like that on a football field. But then like as you watch it unfold, like each time they come back from commercial break, it just gets worse and worse. And like Joe Buck really has nothing to say because there is nothing to say in that moment. And so he's just trying his best to fill time.
Yeah.
And, but also being respectful. And so like, after the game is called or postponed at that point, and just watching SportsCenter after, like seeing all these people try to talk about something that like you just witnessed a man die on the field. Yeah. Now he got resuscitated, but he died on the field. That we just literally watched that from a game, basically what tons of athletes have called a kid's game that they get to do for their livelihood. And that, I mean, literally just an hour or two before this, Chiefs fans are like trash talking both the Bengals and Bills. Bengals and Bills are trash talking everyone else. I mean, like there is hatred and vile all stored up, and then like this moment just resets everything for a week, and it's weird.
There's a Hootie and the Blowfish song. I know this is an out there reference.
This is an out there reference.
Where the lyric in this, I think it's the actual name of the song is called "The World Stopped Cold at Dawn." And it's explaining this moment in life where everything stops. And like, I feel like these flashbulb moments are like that. And I think what the DeMar Hamlin thing, I think that is going to end up being a flashbulb moment. I have an honest question for you, because I did not watch it live, but I was in it minutes after, because I see it unfold on Twitter. And so I immediately talk to you. I'm talking to you and I'm turning it on. And so I'm seeing the aftermath. I'm seeing the ambulance on the field and all that. And here's my honest question. Are flashbulb moments on television going to happen more often now because of the way social media and Twitter and the internet works? We capture more in the zeitgeist. So when something happens now, we flock to it. We're aware of it quicker and we flock to it faster. Is it going to happen more often now? Because I think in the world before the internet, it had to be something we just happened to be watching, right?
Yeah. So
the reason 9/11 is a flashbulb moment, because it's not a singular event. It unfolds as more people are starting to watch what's going on.
Yes. And I mean, I could also go back to, I was watching the Daytona 500 that Dale Earnhardt died.
Yeah.
And that's a flashbulb moment for me, because growing up, I was brought up in a NASCAR family. I rooted for Earnhardt. My dad rooted for Gordon, and like that rivalry just stopped.
You had to be in the areas of the country where stock car racing was big. We clearly were, and that was a flashbulb moment.
And so, like, I think it could, to answer your question, but I also think if we're overwhelmed by the sheer amount of these kind of moments, we get desensitized. And so I only bring that up just because it's something that's happened this week with Turkey and Syria.
Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Because, like, for a lot of, like, anytime I've turned on the TV and even, like, social media, I'm not seeing a whole lot about it.
No.
And I'm like, this is a big deal.
I'm a little frightened by the lack of reaction. Cody, I had to go seek out stuff about this earthquake, and like, let me tell you, if you haven't followed or you haven't heard much about the Turkey earthquake, Syria earthquake, this was a serious, big earthquake. This was a slip fault break. Mm-hmm. Which is like the bad ones. It's the one they always talk about. If it ever happens to San Andreas, California is going to sink into the ocean. It's that one. And that happened in Turkey. And I had to go seek it out. And when I did, it was one of those immediately where I wish I didn't.
Yeah. And so, like, the couple of images that I've actually seen from it that were actually posted on Twitter. And again, I've gone through like thousands of tweets and have only come like across two. But it looked like the early stages of a post-apocalyptic movie or TV show.
Yeah.
Like, there's rubble everywhere. There's cars just stopped. There's like big holes in the ground. And
it seems like the sort of thing that would have been all over our TVs in the 80s if it happened. Mm-hmm. And there's just nothing. It's not, there was no break-in of coverage. I suspect CNN maybe talked about it, but they surely weren't reporting on it day and night.
And like Joe Biden had released a statement, but it was, we're currently, our thoughts and prayers are with Turkey and all those affected by the earthquakes. We're just going to keep monitoring it. And that was like the last I heard from the president, and like, this seems, so my fear is that we will get to a point where some things that used to be like big things will get swept under the rug with desensitization, and also with us cherry picking what we should focus on versus.
I mean, everybody was going nuts over a Chinese weather balloon.
Oh yeah, that was all.
And then
over the
this
place.
happens, and like I had to go find it. It's just amazing to me, and I'm sure the pandemic has something to do with this too. We're all a little bit desensitized, I guess would be a good word. I still think it affects us more than we know. Mm-hmm. I was talking to someone earlier today about, I still think people like to be inside. They like to be at home more than they used to be.
Yeah.
And I don't think we really realize to what extent that's happening.
So I know I mentioned this like during the Last of Us topic, but so LeBron passed Kareem, but I'm watching the sports shows talk about it, and they highlight that Denzel's at the game, Denzel Washington and his wife. And Denzel had told Shannon Sharp that this is the most people I've been around in 3 years. Like, we don't get out.
Wow.
And so, I mean, I don't know if Denzel was constantly going to Lakers games before this, but like, I think that they're even like on the celebrity level, you're seeing people having a concerted effort to be around others.
I think for places where we're like where we live, where we got relatively back to quote unquote normal quicker than like surely they did in California, in LA. I think we said we went back to normal, but then we didn't really take into account our mental state and if we were actually normal, because I don't think we are yet.
No.
But yeah, all of that is interesting stuff to me, fascinating stuff, but where we need to talk about let's move on to some of the more fun items of TV etched in our head. Let's talk about entertainment television etched into our brains.
Oh, I got one. I sent you the clip.
The clip of...
So it's it's a crossover moment for me. And so like growing up, I occasionally watch Walker, Texas Ranger. I don't go out of my way for Walker, Texas Ranger, but occasionally, like if it's on TV,
he's lying. He goes all sorts of out of his way for Walker, Texas Ranger.
I'm watching it, and then Conan. So like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm probably in my like older like grade school level.
I'm to assume that you watched this moment live.
No.
Okay.
No. So like, but Comedy Central would show the re-airings of Conan's show like the next day.
Oh, okay.
So like, I was only a day off. But so they had this thing called the Walker, Texas Ranger lever. And they would just show random clips of Walker, Texas Ranger. It was a running gag for I don't know how long.
I had never seen this clip, and when you sent it to me, I laughed so hard.
So some people are familiar with the great work of Haley Joel Osment. Sixth Sense kid.
Super young here.
And he is in an episode of Walker, Texas Ranger. And so on Conan, they set this up with, we love Walker. We have a clip we are afraid to show. So now we're going to see what type of crowd we have tonight. And they play this clip. And so you have like everyone that's on Walker, the main characters, and they're greeting a young Haley Joel Osment who's standing right next to Chuck Norris, and they're carrying on a conversation. Then out of the blue,
it seems like everyone's happy.
Yeah, everyone's happy. And then out of the blue, Haley Joel Osment's like, Walker told me I have AIDS. And that's like that's where they stopped the clip at. And like, it's just kind of this shock. And it makes you laugh nervously.
Conan's reaction to it is the best.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those. I need to see the context of that full episode so I can understand what just happened.
So there's an episode that they do again where Conan sets it up like, we're a little nervous to show you this one. This one might be the worst thing ever. And I don't know if it's the guy that plays Doc Ock or not, but it looks like him. And he's telling this kid who's on like one of those fancy bookcase ladders, to jump off. And the kid jumps, and he has his hands out to catch him, and then he steps back and lets the kid fall. And Conan's reaction to that, because like he has his hands over his face and is like, and starts like running back and forth. And so there's a lot of random Conan moments with Walker, Texas Ranger clips mixed in, but the Haley Joel Osment one's like one that's permanently ingrained in my brain. So some people think I see dead people when Haley Joel Osment's name gets brought up, or they see him in shows now. No, I think Walker told me I have AIDS.
Yeah, when you sent me that clip, I'd never seen it.
I had
never seen it, and it was kind of amazing. I'm going to go in reverse order here. So I'm going to start off with my newest TV moment etched in my brain first, and that will be from a 2016 episode of Game of Thrones, referred to as the Battle of the Bastards. This battle for the North by Jon Snow and the forces of House Stark and the Boltons. And there's this moment which I sent. I think I posted a pictures on the Facebook post we made.
I didn't know what that was from. I was like, what is this?
It's basically Jon Snow where he's staring down a force by himself that's coming at him, and you think he's about to sacrifice himself. It's like, well, I guess this is the end of him, and his army shows up just in time. And it's one of those moments where, again, that was one of those shows where book readers, you have this vision of something in your head. Mm-hmm. And the experience I have for this on the big screen that I would compare this to was the Two Towers.
Yeah.
And when Gandalf shows up at the end of episode 2 or Two Towers. And this was very much the same. It kind of brought tears to my eyes to see the images of something that I'd already thought about, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was, and of course, that was just before they ran out of book to adapt, when the show goes completely to junk.
Garbaggio, as we say.
And so, yeah, that was one I remember.
That's a good one. And we'll connect with a lot more people than my Walker, Texas Ranger Conan crossover event.
Yeah, look, everybody should seek out the Walker, Texas Ranger clips from Conan, because that clip you sent me was hilarious.
So I'll go, just because you went brand new, I'll go newer as well. So again, I brought it up earlier, but Peacemaker, like, there's a lot of memorable moments from it, and I could go with the guy describing the Hamburglar as the killer, but I'm going to go with when so the team is trying to they just accomplished this mission, and like, they actually gel, and they're rocking out to an 80s band, and everyone's doing it. And James Gunn's wife's character, that's how I'm going to describe it, she takes a photo of it and then, like, sends it to them and creates a group chat, and like everyone's face in that when they get that message, like, they're all happy, like they actually feel like they belong, because it's a group of misfits. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone besides Peacemaker is basically Amanda Waller's kind of rejected crew, except for Amanda Waller's daughter, which you might say is kind of rejected. But and then you have Peacemaker and Vigilante, and like, yeah, they're all rocking out, and they're all like actually supporting each other, because throughout the early episodes there's always conflict and tension within the Peacemaker gang, and so now they're happy, and it's just like,
you just really love that show.
I do. Like, James Gunn gets me. That's what I'm going to say. So I know if you listened last week, you will know that I'm all for the James Gunn DCU. Okay. And especially if he's writing, he gets me. I'm down. So that moment was something that, like, just instantly clicked.
Yeah. So my next one is it's from a TV show called Rome. And
Jim Rome is burning.
No, it has nothing to do with Jim Rome. It was a show on HBO about the Roman beginning of the Roman Empire, the fall of the Roman Republic, Julius Caesar, all those stories. But it centers on these two Roman soldiers named Titus Pullo and Lucius Vorenus, played by Ray Stevenson, who was one of the Punishers in one of those bad Punisher movies, and Kevin McKidd, who is the red-haired guy who was on Grey's Anatomy for a while.
Didn't watch Grey's. I assume he died.
I don't know. Everyone on Grey's Anatomy probably dies at some point. But
yes,
this story is about these two soldiers who are a part of Julius Caesar's legions. They come back to Rome when Julius Caesar comes back to Rome. And the brilliance of this show on HBO was that it followed these two normal soldiers, but they're weaving in and out of real history, right? So their stories are fictional, but they're weaving in and out of real events. And it was kind of masterfully done. Only 2 seasons, which was sad. But in the first season, we're following them. They come back from war and their fortunes kind of go in 2 different directions, right? So Lucius Varenus, played by Kevin McKidd, he, becomes a successful businessman. Things are going well, while the other guy, Titus Pullo, starts to struggle, and he ends up falling in love. But then, the girl's not in love with him, and in a moment of rage, he kills her fiance. And he's sentenced to death in the arena, right? And in one of the moments of the first season, like I think it's in the next to last episode of the first season, and this was the picture I posted.
And I was like, is this from Spartacus?
Yeah. So Spartacus comes out after Rome. It's a feeble attempt to cash in on Rome's success, and it wasn't nearly as good. He's in the arena, and he's just going to let these guys kill him. He won't fight these gladiators until they start making fun of the 13th, which was his legion.
How dare you?
Now, meanwhile, his friend, Lucius Varenus, who's got this successful business going on, he's becoming politically important, like he's being groomed to run for the Senate. He's watching all this unfold, and he's been told, hey, you can't interfere with this because it would be damaging to Julius Caesar. Well, he starts, his friend in the arena starts fighting it, and he kills I want to say he kills 5 or 6 gladiators all by himself before he starts getting overwhelmed by the numbers. But the whole time he's yelling 13, like he's, and you can see like his friend is really struggling until he finally goes in to help him. And it's one of these moments of like, I don't know, when I see loyalty on the screen, it gets etched in my brain. And this was this just supreme moment of like, it's sort of like what people who are really into Band of Brothers must have felt too. Because there's this moment of loyalty that he can't withstand anymore, where he has to go in and help his brother in arms. And it's just a great moment. Anybody that hasn't seen Rome, one of the best HBO shows ever. Only 2 seasons. It flashed out in a blaze.
Jim Rome is burning. Not as great.
No.
So I'll go with one of my favorite shows, and there's a lot of memories and moments that just stand out within it. And like Brendan Fraser has one of the most impactful episodes, but I'm not going to go with his episode. So the show Scrubs, which great show. And so Tom Cavanaugh, do you know Tom Cavanaugh?
I do.
So he plays Dr. John Dorian's brother.
Okay, he was in the Flash series.
He was in the Flash series. Yeah. And so he plays JD's brother, who is Zach Braff, for those of you who don't know who JD is. And so JD and his brother, their dad dies. Mm-hmm. And the person that played their dad in real life also had died. The person that played their dad in real life was John Ritter.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, like John Ritter had been on a couple episodes, and then he dies in real life. And so they wanted to do like an in memoriam episode. And so John C. McGinley, who is also very funny and very famous, he's Dr. Cox. The thing is, JD had been there for his brother, Tom Cavanaugh, and he had been there for Dr. Cox at various times in their lives. Dr. Cox, who lost his brother-in-law to cancer, which was played by Brendan Fraser in that episode. If you don't cry, that's on you. That's on you. But they team up because they say in the episode, we're not fully like human. We're not like fully developed emotionally. We're stunted men, but together we might be just enough to help him out through this. And so, at the very end of it, they are watching hockey and talking about his dad, and just that moment, it hits.
Wow.
Hits the feels.
Scrubs was a show. My wife swears by it too. And it was just a show was never on my radar.
So like there's a lot of funny moments in Scrubs, but like when they choose to go sad, like I think it lands better because you're so used to like quick-witted humor that's back and forth. And
the shows that were generally funny that can do meaningful, yeah, they can land a punch. A show that was on my radar, one of my favorite shows of all time on television, we've talked about this show a lot, was Lost. There was a lot of moments of Lost that were etched in my brain. I could have picked the end of the episode where Charlie's dying. He's drowning. He holds up the hand. He's written on his hand he holds up his hand to the window on the door because the guy can't get him out. The door's locked. And he can't rescue him from drowning. And he's written on his hand in Sharpie, "Not Penny's boat," which was important information for the guy that was going to be left. Charlie dies in that episode. And that was an amazing moment. But the moment I'm going to go with was there was a certain narrative structure on Lost where you follow these castaways, basically these people who have survived a plane wreck. And they have been on this weird deserted island. And each episode, the story moved forward interspersed with flashbacks for one of the characters, much like we were talking about earlier with Last of Us, where you're learning you're getting character development with the flashbacks. So we get to the season finale. I can't remember which season. It might have been 3 or 4. And at the end of the episode, it switches from our story on the island to what we think is a flashback. We see Jack, the doctor, he's bearded. He gets out of the car. Someone gets out of the other car. It's Kate, played by Evangeline Lilly, who's now in the Ant-Man movies as the Wasp. And we suddenly realize, seeing these two characters back in the real world, like, this is not a flashback. And he says, "We have to go back, Kate. We have to go back." And at that moment, the TV show pulls one of the all-time swerves. And that's after he says that, it does the poof thing where the show ends, the logo comes up, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? It's one of the ultimate swerves in TV history, where they switched the narrative. The narrative for the whole next season would move to flash forwards instead of flashbacks. And it was just a total mind rip.
Until the end of the series.
No, the end of the series was fine.
That's not what the internet
They were
says.
never going to answer all of the questions. It's not that kind of a show.
I haven't watched the show, so I can't comment.
Do you have any more?
Oh, yeah.
Because I have one more.
Okay, so I got 2 more.
Okay.
But I'll try to make them quick.
Yeah, let's make a bonus round. We're running long.
So David Tennant, Doctor Who.
Oh, he's going Doctor Who.
So there's a popular GIF on the internet of an old man crying from Doctor Who.
Yes, I use that GIF a lot.
You do. So there's at the very end of Tennant's run, there's I think it takes part over 2 episodes, but it's like feature length, movie length. The End of Time, in which Timothy Dalton's in it and a bunch of other famous people, famous Brits are in it. But throughout the episode and before the episode actually starts, previous episodes, it's all building up to David Tennant's character meeting his demise. And like there's this prophecy, this foretelling that like these 4 beats or this beat pattern, you're going to hear that, and that's when you know it's over. And I mean, the world just goes crazy pants, like everywhere. Like the Doctor's main rival, the Master, has like turned everyone on Earth into the Master. You have to watch the episode to figure that out, except for the old man, who is Wilford, played by Bernard Cribbins, and David Tennant. So they're like the only two that's really there, that's living their best life.
Yeah.
But so Bernard Cribben's character Wilford gets locked into like this chamber, which saves his life. But then there's an alarm that goes off, and like Tennant thinks he's defeated the master. Life's great. And he's like, what's that sound? And then he hears Wilford knocking on the glass. And it's the beat that has been haunting him for the whole length of essentially the series, which is a season in America. So the whole length of that season, this knocking, which they thought was like, oh, that's the sound of a Time Lord's heartbeat or something. No, it's Wilford knocking, and that's when he knows he has to go in to get Wilford out of that chamber and take on like all this gamma radiation. And so then you get like a moment of, I'm only going to visit you one more time, but when I do, it's going to be something important. And so the doctor, as David Tennant, because he's dying slowly from all the gamma radiation, he visits when Donna's getting married. And so that's a
So the moment is the GIF moment.
Yeah.
With Wilford doing the hand in the air and crying thing.
Yeah. So that's one of the moments.
Here's where I stand with Doctor Who. I really want to go back and get into Doctor Who, but there's so much content, it just is overwhelming to me.
So like you just start with Eccleston. That's where you start. In which I think you would actually like the series because they do go back in time to historical events.
Yeah, I like
And then
history.
they go into like sci-fi stuff and they go in the future. And I mean, they do a whole bunch of stuff.
What season is Eccleston?
So he's the 9th Doctor. He's right before Tennant.
Okay.
And
I would understand it fine watching it from there.
So that's when like the modern run happens. And it's, I don't know, the mid 2000s, the aughts that it happens.
All right.
Do you want me to do
go
the last
ahead.
one? Okay,
Go ahead.
last one. And this is a modern one again. Sandman, the series I love.
Wow. That etched something in your memory?
So the episode where you meet Sandman's sister, Death, like the whole episode, like all the feels, because she visits an old man who's like ready to die. He's a accomplished violinist, and like he recognizes her immediately. Mm-hmm. He's like, it's my time. She goes and Sandman's with her, and she goes and visits a baby, and like you see the heartbreak of the family. And like some people are welcoming, some people aren't. But throughout this episode, like she's revealing things to him, he's revealing things to her, and it's really great. And then at the very end, it comes full circle because at the beginning you meet her and him. They're on a bench watching a soccer game, and a ball goes out into traffic, and she stops it, throws it to the guy playing soccer, and he's like, thank you, and can I get your name? And she's like, we'll see each other again. And the episode ends with him getting hit by a car.
Huh. Okay.
Oh yeah, like very moving episode. And I could have went with Sandman battling Lucifer.
I did see that clip.
That whole episode's great too, but that moment is impactful too.
So this is going to not come as a shock to anyone. One of my favorite TV shows of all time is a show called Smallville.
Yes.
About Clark Kent in high school. It was sort of a mixture of Superboy and Dawson's Creek. It was kind of, it sounds lame.
It was the best of both worlds.
Looking back, it was kind of lame, but it just hits me at the right time of my life, and it still holds a special place for me. And much of the early episodic nature of that show was Clark Kent kind of pining for Lana Lang. Clark Kent has this crush on Lana Lang. Lana Lang has a boyfriend. They're friends, but that's it. But because Lana Lang is dating the quarterback of the football team. And in season number 1, and I can remember this was the moment I knew I was into this show. So I had watched most of season 1 because they really kind of struggle getting their storytelling feet under them. They're running with what they call Freak of the Week style episodes, where each week there was a random person who had been infected by meteors and had a weird power. And it was just that kind of narrative, and it was hard to get into. But somewhere near the end of season 1, or about just over halfway through season 1, the story starts to finally get going. And it's a lot that has to do with Clark being in love with Lana Lang, her not really knowing it. There's another friend named Chloe who's in love with Clark.
Oh, Chloe.
There's lots of unrequited love going on.
Much.
Well,
it does feel like Dawson's Creek.
And there's just a random episode where the quarterback boyfriend of the girl Clark likes dies.
Oh, no.
Which comes at a bad time because it was right at this moment where she was about to break up with him.
Ooh.
And maybe be available to Clark. And so this episode ends at this funeral. It's pouring rain. Everybody's under umbrellas. And the music, so it's like slow motion, raining, and the song that's playing is Time After Time, but not the Cyndi Lauper version. There's a great acoustic version done by the late Eva Cassidy. Eva Cassidy was a musician. She died of cancer. But this version of Time After Time, I suggest anyone go look it up. It's amazing. It's playing during this funeral scene where it's pouring in rain, and the looks that the actors are giving each other. So Clark looks at Lana, who is next to her boyfriend, and there's this understanding as they look at each other that, like, yeah, I like you, but now I can't leave him. Like, he needs someone. He's broken. And Clark is just looking at her. Meanwhile, Chloe is looking at Clark and sees the look they're sharing and understands that she can't compete. And there's all this like emotional tension with this beautiful song playing, and the camera work is better than any stupid TV show about superheroes has any right to be. Like, the camera work's amazing, and it results in this iconic shot of
which I saw, and I'm like, who's that guy?
It's Clark Kent walking away from the funeral in the pouring rain, and he's framed by standing next to this big statue of an angel, which we've talked so much about the Jesus imagery with Superman. It was no accident. They did that intentionally, and it's just... that scene is an iconic scene, and just better than it had any right to be the kind of show it was. It was amazing. That was the scene that hooked me on that show, and it was fantastic, music and all. And that's my last moment of television etched in my brain. What are some of the moments etched in your brains in your memory from TV?
And I know if you're a Whovian, you probably have 15 other ones that were better. And I would not argue. So
a lot of you shared some when we shared the initial post when we started thinking about this episode. But go ahead and share them again on this post for this episode. We'd love to see what moments in television history are etched in your memory. As usual, thank you so much for listening. Make sure and subscribe and review our show, rate our show, share it with friends. That all helps us out. And we will see you next week.